Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Basin. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Basin. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Hello, everybody. This is the original outlaw of the airwaves, Ryan, bringing you another VIP episode of Hero Paranormal from Sin City, Nevada, the Silver State, just south of Area 51. You all know it, Las Vegas. It's pretty much a ghost town these days, and we're going to get into that. But we're going to kind of get into some other stuff right away first, and it's stuff that is no joke, stuff that has been written about that has pretty much blown me away. Our guest let the world know about the new owner of Skinwalker Ranch. As if that isn't enough, our guest has had a bunch of other amazing articles, and I hope we get into some of them. As nice a guy as you could ever hope to meet. We've been blessed enough to have him on the Hero Paranormal podcast a couple of times now, MJ Banias. If you haven't seen his work, you've been living under a rock, or like most of us, you've seen his work and you didn't know it was his work. He's the guy that's been able to get things done unlike anyone else. First, he had a great article about Skinwalker Ranch and praises for that article. It was amazing. Without skipping a beat, he then did what nobody else was able to do. And he came out with an article about the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. Not only did he find out who he was, not only did they hang out. I don't want to go into details because that's what MJ is going to do for us. And if you haven't yet, definitely check out his website, which is terraobscura.com. I could go on and on about MJ, but his work speaks for itself. If you haven't checked out heroparanormal.com, check it out. Go ahead and become a patron. Don't be scared of that button. For about $1, you can get to be a patron and get content other people don't. Pretty cool stuff. Podcasts work that way, and when you start calculating everything, you gotta ask for $1 here and there. Anyway, the website is heroparanormal.com. Check it out. That's where the archive is. Go to heroparanormal.podbean.com if you want to be able to download it in the quickest downloadable format. And so now we are going to talk to the master media blaster of disaster, MJ Banias. He is the cleanest, meanest in the game right now, and we're going to find out how he did the unthinkable, impossible feat of not only putting Skinwalker on the map with his amazing article and helping get more attention towards it, but then coming forth with the owner's name. And it's going to be a great time. It's going to be a lot of fun. MJ Banias, welcome to the Hero Paranormal podcast.
Oh, thanks very much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, this is exciting. You I had you on quite a while ago, and since then, you've really been busy in digging into stuff that is like right up my alley and the kind of stuff that I'm into. It's been pretty exciting. It's, I think both articles were on Vice Motherboard. On the first one, it was more or less looking into a UFO hotspot, and then on the second one, you delved into the possible ownership, the ownership that was really a secret until then. Could we go into that and how that all came about?
Yeah, sure. We can discuss it. Yeah, no problem. Now that it's in the public, right? Now that it's public.
Right. That's the important thing. And it's really exciting. It's like a whole new era to something that a lot of people have kind of had on the back burner. So I guess a question I did want to ask you is, one of the coolest articles on the planet, in my opinion, was first, it came out January 30th of 2020. You dropped an article on Vice Motherboard titled Inside Skinwalker Ranch, a paranormal hotbed of UFO research. Great article, blew me away. And I was just amazed. I was like, this is great. I loved your articles before then. What kind of brought you down that path of the Skinwalker, so to speak?
Right, yeah. Well, being in the UFO paranormal research community, Skinwalker Ranch is definitely a place that tends to pop up a lot in discussions and in books and podcasts and that type of thing. So it has a pretty sort of rich history, and it's kind of, one of those locations that seems to be on a lot of people's bucket lists. This all began for me probably about 8 months or so before the article came out. It was during the summertime. I got in touch with the owner, Brandon Fugal, out of Utah, and just sort of flat out, said, "Listen, I'm doing some work. I'm doing some research into Skinwalker Ranch. I understand you own it. Do you want to make a statement for the article?" And he promptly emailed me back and said, listen, he sort of explained the situation to me, and he said, if basically he kind of offered me an offer I couldn't refuse, which was, listen, if you hold off on the article, you can come on the ranch and do an exclusive on the ranch. So for any journalist whose beat is UFOs and the paranormal, writing a one article about the ranch and just sort of exposing him that way versus, getting the opportunity to go on the ranch and actually see what's going on and get that sort of investigative piece out, to me as a journalist is a lot more important. Outing him was not really the purpose of the article, but in kind of the way it worked out, I managed to get onto the ranch and dig in and actually see what they're doing there, and put aside and kind of start chipping away a bit at the mythology and the weird sort of lore and legends that surround the ranch and trying to piece together the actual maybe science that's going on or the actual research that's being done. So yeah, that's kind of how it began. It began as almost like a threat and confrontation, and it turned into this piece or these two pieces rather of me being able to come on the ranch and then interview him for an exclusive.
So exciting. And for a lot of people, I mean, it's just kind of a new era as far as there's more transparency apparently, and newer technology, and it's really, really pretty cool for people that are following this. What was, if you don't mind me asking, what was the climate when you visited? Was it cold? Was it stormy?
Do you mean like in like their personalities or like the actual weather?
Yeah, like the actual weather and personalities too. Oh. Good point. I mean, that's important too. How was like, how did it make you feel when you rolled in there?
Yeah. So weather-wise, it was actually, it's really funny. I'd never been to Utah before, and where I live in the prairies, so the weather here is pretty consistent everywhere you go. So, I can pick a direction and drive for 8 hours in any direction, and it's going to be the same weather, basically. Whereas when we got to Utah, the valley, where Salt Lake City's in, and then the Uintah Basin, were very beautiful and calm, and the weather was nice. And then the mountains in between the two places were brutal snowstorms. So the original plan was to fly to the ranch from Salt Lake City. But, we got on the helicopter, we started flying, and the pilot, said, zero chance are we flying through this. We'll go down in these mountains and they'll never find us. So it was decided that we should probably just promptly turn around. So we kind of flew into the storm a little bit, and then just so I could experience it, he just wanted me to feel the helicopter shake violently. That's all he really wanted me to scare me with. But so we turned around and landed back in Salt Lake City, and we decided the next morning that we would jump in the truck and drive. And it was hairy, man. Like the mountains were basically, it was just a snowstorm. There was points where we were maybe going, 30 miles an hour down a highway because of just the visibility. But once we got into the basin, it was beautiful. It was blue skies. It was a nice warm day. There was snow on the ground, maybe a couple inches. But it was awesome. The ranch was pretty cool. The roads were all muddy and potholed, so it was rough to kind of get around. But it was weather-wise, it was great. Getting there, it was really nice because I got to hang out with Mr. Fugal for about 2 days before I made it to the ranch. So he and I, we ate together. I sort of followed him around for the day. He took me on a tour of Salt Lake City. So it was kind of cool to be with him, and he and I, we bonded in a way, right? I was sort of the journalist following him around and trying to tell his story. But once I got on the ranch, I could tell that immediately there was a bit of mistrust on the part of the security team there. They were like, who is this guy? What's he going to say about us? And there was that brief 1 hour period of just, is this guy cool? And then, after a while, I put on the old charm and they realized I wasn't, here to harm anybody or cause any damage or, insult anyone's intelligence. I'm just here to tell a story. So, it took about an hour, but eventually we warmed up, to each other and Brian Arnold, who is the security chief there, he was pretty cool and we kind of became buddies. We shot some guns. It was a good time.
It sounds epic. It sounds so exciting. It is really exciting, and it's functioning as kind of a neat. I think that the follow up on the project, it's been really cool reading your articles and to ask you another question to kind of change track. And also when you met him, I loved how in the article you were 22 stories up in a striking glass building. It is just. It's like a real life, superhero type story, kind of a Bruce Wayne type of a feel to it. And I think that it's cool how you actually went to the ranch and super followed up. What was the experience like when in Salt Lake, overlooking the city's skyline and all, being in the business mecca and just all of that.
Yeah. Mr. Fugal is you describe him as a Bruce Wayne, and he does have that bit. There's a bit of that element to him. He's also very much like a very normal person. He's totally like a sci-fi geek. Like this guy, like he's more nerdy than I am, and I'm pretty nerdy when it comes to sci-fi stuff. But he's a super nerd. So he has all of the memorabilia. He loves, the Alien movies and Prometheus and Superman, and he's got the Terminator jacket. Like he's got all of these, movie props and stuff from all these different sci-fi films and fantasy films and action movies as well. So, he very much kind of has this geeky personality, and he'll randomly quote movies at you. So we hit it off in that sense, just because we both like Star Wars and whatever. We could have conversations about nerdy things. But he does have, a significant sort of business acumen. The guy, from a commercial real estate standpoint and just from a business standpoint, he's a fairly clever guy. He makes, fairly good business decisions, obviously to the point where it's made him a significant amount of money, to the point where he can buy, 512 acres in the middle of Utah for no other reason than to study it, for, odd phenomena. And sink in, a significant amount of resources into it. That being said, the ranch is still a ranch. He does have, cattle being raised on it. It's not his. He sort of rents it to other ranchers. But, so, I'm sure there's some, economic benefit. I don't think he's making any money on it, obviously, because, raising cattle isn't exactly a prosperous job, especially if you're just renting land. But, it for him, he views this place as a science project, and he has the ability to do that and function in that way. but he was pretty open with me. I mean, we were standing in his office building and just kind of overlooking downtown Salt Lake City, and he was very clear. He said, this is in a way his search for the truth, right? Whatever that may be, right? And in the article, I kind of discussed that. I kind of said, this is sort of his search for maybe vindication or for God or something to that effect, right? What makes the universe tick is what he's interested in. And if there's weird stuff happening, these weird anomalies and paranormal events, is this a process of the universe that we just don't understand? And what can he do with his wealth to kind of help us understand that? So it was pretty neat in a, like you say, sort of in this kind of Bruce Wayne kind of superhero way. Now, that being said, he is just a normal guy who makes mistakes. He's like everyone else. But he's definitely interested in some interesting and odd things, that's for sure.
It's great. It is great for, it puts things that aren't typically expected to be interests of people like him, and I think it puts kind of everything in a good light for followers of this type of phenomena and things taking place. It's interesting. I mean, an article exposing the name of the real estate magnate who bought Skinwalker Ranch. It's so exciting, and man, you're killing it out there since the last podcast and writing about exactly the things that I think are the pulse of the paranormal until this crazy COVID quarantine. And I hope that's all going well for you too. It's wild times. How do you get such great mind-blowing topics approved, and how do they come to you?
That is, I have to be honest, I'm still working on that. I have no idea. It's, when I started this a long time ago, I never thought that I would be writing for mainstream, outfits like Vice or Pocket Mechanics. It never crossed my mind. At first I was a blogger, and then I started writing for Mysterious Universe, which for me was an honor. Like, Mysterious Universe in the paranormal community is like the news source for a lot of people, and it was an epic time, and for me, I was so proud to be writing for them. I mean, they're amazing at Mysterious Universe. But after my book came out, I was trying to pitch articles to more mainstream sources like Vice, but they were never really interested, because what wasn't happening, I think, was that translation between connecting the sort of the paranormal, ufological, esoteric content to the mainstream, right? And in my head, I was approaching it as if everyone knew this stuff, as if everyone out there in the world knew about paranormal stuff or ufological stuff, and like they cared. And in reality, we care as a community, like as a subculture, we care about this stuff. But to the broader world, they don't, right? Like, they have their own problems. They've got bills to pay and families to raise, and they got to drive their daughters to dance class and their sons to baseball or whatever people do with their children. I don't know. I have too. It's just my kids do different things, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, they have their lives to live, and they're interested in what they're interested in, and UFOs and the paranormal are just not part of that. So trying to pivot those ideas to a more mainstream audience was the big challenge. And then eventually I did it. I got lucky. Vice was interested in the pitch I had regarding, the Navy coming forward with some videos, as well as what kind of young people in the UFO community thought of them. And that was my first Vice article, because it was kind of along their style. They're like, this kind of, it's a UFO piece, which is cool. It's also about kind of the young UFO subculture. So yeah, let's do it. And they gave me the chance. The editor and I, he really liked the work, and he gave me another piece, and then it became another piece and another piece, and now it's kind of a regular thing with Vice. And it's just, again, framing the content so it appeals to a mainstream audience. It doesn't bludgeon them with, UFO facts or paranormal facts or whatever, or data or whatever, because, again, to most people, they just want kind of the basic information. But yeah, that's kind of how it began. The ideas kind of come I think it's just taking what the UFO community is dealing with or has dealt with for a long time and figuring out how it applies to everybody in the world, right? How do I sell this weird little ranch that no one's ever heard of, apart from us, to a larger community of people, right? That's the trick. And that's actually the hardest part. I have to be honest. I can write 30,000 words about Skinwalker Ranch if I had to right now, but the problem is it would only really appeal to our community, right? And the goal is to try to make it appeal to millions of people who aren't in our community, right? And how do I bring them in? So that's kind of the situation I'm in. And I have to be honest, it's actually tougher than I think, because a lot of times, I'll write an article and my editor will come back and be like, dude, this is way too subcultural for us. We need to kind of tweak it. So we'll have to edit stuff out and fix it and shape it up so that it's, a little more, like I said, approachable by mainstream audiences. But yeah, that's really all it is. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah. I mean, Mysterious Universe, I agree. It's great. It's the best, but it's like bringing in the broader mainstream, UFOs and the paranormal, especially through a like Vice. It's just epic. I wanted to ask you also, what you were mentioning, like this is very odd and different in subculture. And there's a part of your article where you asked him straight up, let me read it here. It's great. Why the hell did you buy Skinwalker Ranch? Are you crazy? For somebody so successful. So it's obviously, it's altruistic in some way, shape or form to him. And I think that's really cool that you kind of really dug in there and, to find the tougher answers that we're all striving to know.
Well, there's, the thing is, there's a lot of speculation, and the UFO community is almost naturally designed to be incredibly conspiratorial, and to find shadows in corners that don't really exist. Only today, like literally on Twitter, someone was questioning whether the Skinwalker thing was a big scam, and I mean, I guess you could sort of find that route of conspiratorial thinking to get to that conclusion the same way you can find the route of conspiratorial thinking to assume that JFK was murdered by the Illuminati and the president is a lizard person. Like, you could kind of find that evidence if you really wanted to, so long as you kind of play fast and loose with the facts a little bit. You can get to any conclusion you want. So we're kind of, as a group, often bent towards conspiracy and thinking that everyone's out to get us. And I'm not really sure if that's the case. And I think once you start peeling back kind of the mythology we build around things like Skinwalker Ranch, like Brandon Fugal, like this whole situation around the ranch that's occurred for the last 2 decades or so, right? The Bass and the Nids era and the Sherman family and sort of the sale of the ranch to Fugal, like all that stuff, the last 20 or 30 years of history. Once you start kind of just peeling back and looking at it, you realize that it's just people, right? Just humans making decisions, sometimes because they believe in aliens, in the case of Mr. Bigelow, sometimes in the case of maybe, getting some money in regards to the Shermans and buying a ranch, and in the case of Mr. Fugal, it's literally just he has the money to buy an expensive thing and study it because he's, just like I'm, I don't know, what am I interested in? I have hobbies. I'm interested in UFOs. So it's natural for me to spend, $100 a month on UFO books, where to someone who's not into UFOs, they would view that as an insane act. You know what I mean? So it's just humans doing human-y things. And I don't think that there's really any conspiracy or malice behind it. It's just people doing what they want to do. So yeah, it is very human, right? I mean, if I could afford Skinwalker Ranch, I would probably buy it. I can't, so I won't. But it's what you're interested in, what you're into, and I think that that's one thing that our community kind of needs just to get a grip on, right? It's just people being people, and sometimes for sure there's going to be dishonesty, right? Sometimes there's going to be con artists lumped into our community who engage in nefarious activities. But I think most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time people are just doing what they want to do. And there's no ill will or malice or anything illegal happening. So yeah, I've had a lot of blowback actually out of this article from people who think that Fugal is some sort of con man who's trying to milk Skinwalker Ranch for money. And it's fine if they want to believe that, but I have to be honest, he doesn't need the money. Like any money Skinwalker Ranch earns, is literally like to him a 2-4, a 24 case of beer. Like that's basically it. So it's interesting. It's a weird world and how it's all played out for me for the last few months.
Yes, it is.
Long way to answer your question. Sorry, I went on a rant there.
I love it. No, but it's controversial, and it is, like you said, people get caught up in it and reality tends to fade. Well, it's something that researchers that are into it big time kind of call ranch fever. And it's like where you analyze every little thing. And I've been caught up in it, and I know a lot of people have, and it's hard to stay out of that group think, but it is controversial. I mean, this property is so off the beaten path. It's just not the normal, thing that you would want your clients to know about, especially somebody in his position. And I think he said that, he knew that he couldn't keep his ownership of the ranch secret forever. And after all, it's one of the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspots on the planet. This is just, eventually he knew he had to engage. And I think it's cool that he chose you because you got into the more mind-blowing stuff and the topics that, are really interesting about the why. And I think it's so strange, the Skinwalker Ranch as a project, it's great.
Yeah, no, I think if there is something going on, right, you want someone who's fairly objective. He seems like a fairly objective individual, in the sense that, he often sort of said, this is what it could be, but I don't know. So until the data comes in, right, he's going to be secretive in the sense that, they just don't have enough data to make any conclusions yet, right? So, everyone's going to speculate whether it's paranormal or some government program, or, you can just run down the list of all ufological, like it's aliens, like whatever. You can run down the list of all the different, possibilities and speculative hypotheses that people have. But he and his team, they might have their own personal opinions, like they might have their own personal hypotheses, but realistically, they're not going to talk about it until the data's in, right? They need a lot more data. They need a lot more time. He bought the ranch in 2016. They really got it up and running about a year, shy of a year later, early 2017-ish, late 2016 maybe. That's when they sort of had most of their equipment kind of going up. The last 2 years or so has really been kind of the big push, all of the big tech that's been rolled out, and now the heavy data collection is now occurring. Good science takes time, right? I think if people are expecting, we should see reports coming out, we should, know the story. Well, listen, most scientific studies take a minimum of 5 to 10 years. So, like, again, right, there's this rush in the community. We want to know the answer, we want to know the answer, we want to know the answer. But they're just not going to kind of, slap it down and be like, well, we saw one thing. Here you go, baby, evidence UFOs are real. They're gonna obviously do proper studies. And again, it's going to kind of bug the UFO community a little bit because those studies obviously take a lot longer than most people are willing to wait. Especially people who don't have a background in sort of anything science related, right? Good science takes a long time to do. So, it was a controversial purchase for him for sure. But the way he's approaching it, I think, is to kind of reduce that the controversy around it, right? Let's take a look at what the skeptics are saying, and let's take a look at what the believers are saying, and let's find where the evidence and the facts actually lie here. And then once we have enough of those facts and enough evidence, let's come to a conclusion then with what we have.
Yeah, I like that. Good science takes time. That's so true. In the article, MJ, you mentioned that his journey kind of began in 2010, and I thought it was so neat that he and several others did a project that basically went into gravitational physics theories and renewable energy. And he admits it's a shot in the dark, but he went for it. I mean, this is kind of that good science takes time. It's, being able to get back up and get back on the horse and not reaching for something to spread quickly. And then, if you don't, it seems like sometimes people like there are some nut jobs, they immediately go to conspiracy. It's so cool that he is involved in these projects, and I just think that your coverage of it is epic.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, he's had an interest in this stuff, and it's he seems to be doing what he's doing. But I appreciate your kind words about my coverage. I hopefully people enjoy it, and hopefully people read it, because that's all I really want to do is I want to tell good stories. So thanks very much for your kind words. I do appreciate them.
Yeah, it reads well. I mean, it's just so neat, the people he's gotten to meet and how they became friends working on these amazing projects. Whether these things came to fruition or not, these are big questions and big issues that are being tackled. And I mean, among those names, it's Hal Puthoff, Christopher Green. It's amazing. Robert Bigelow. It's just, I mean, it's entertaining. And regarding the ranch, I'm a sucker for anything that has to do with it. So that being stated, when I heard of the article and I read it, I was just like, this is the best idea ever. And I think it's great that you're proposing these ideas. Did you get any inkling of what did he go into any inkling of what it was like to meet with some of these amazing people like Dr. Hal Puthoff, Bigelow, Christopher Green?
He did, yeah. I mean, we spoke the most about Robert Bigelow. He got to meet with him obviously prior to the purchase. They talked about their various projects. They talked about obviously space exploration, and they talked about the ranch and what sort of the transition would be like. It was a lot of business. They definitely sort of discussed some personal things too in regards to maybe their personal outlook and belief in these things. I didn't get very many details, but I think overall it shows that there's still this kind of close knit group of individuals who have been studying this phenomenon for a while, since the 1970s, some of them, and they kind of continue on with each other, working together. And obviously this, Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, what we refer to often as the invisible college, right? What Vallée kind of spoke of in the book, this kind of group of people who have been engaged together for the better part of 40 years, studying UFOs and the paranormal and all of these different things. And for better or worse, right? I mean, a lot of times what happens is when groups are together for so long, they start to stovepipe and they become echo chambers. And, obviously you need some, new blood every once in a while to mix it up a bit and to challenge ideas and whatever. But they're this kind of group of like-minded individuals, let's say, who engage in this stuff together. And obviously, Mr. Fugal is somehow connected to them. I think he's a little more skeptical maybe than some of them are. For example, Mr. Bigelow publicly stated, I believe in extraterrestrials and I believe they're visiting Earth. I don't think, Mr. Fugal is prepared to make that statement. I don't think he would probably say, well, I'm not sure if there's enough evidence to prove that, but, maybe it's a possibility. So, you have this relationship that's been formed since 2010, I think, between all of these individuals, Mr. Fugal included. And that's an interesting little group of people who I would love to just as a journalist, right? I would love to kind of dig into more and find more information about them and what makes them tick, and talk to them about their ideas and their beliefs. Because I think it is interesting and compelling. And again, it's good storytelling. But yeah, it's cool. It was cool to kind of discuss, and you know, obviously, for me personally, I wrote a book where I interviewed Hal Puthoff and Kit Green and Dr. Gary Nolan. You know, so I know some of the people that he knows, because we sort of speak off and on just in regards to sort of doing research for articles or whatever. And I'll often kind of go to them for you know, maybe some direction. Who do I need to talk to about this? And they'll sometimes point me in, you know, oh, you should talk to this guy. You should talk to this person over here. So yeah, it's kind of this group that, you know, it was nice to kind of hear some of his thoughts on them, because, you know, I had some similar ideas, and I was like, oh, okay, good. We see eye to eye on this individual or that individual. Yeah, that guy's totally nuts was, you know, one thing we said. No, I'm just joking. That's just a joke. You know, it was fun. It was a good time to kind of get to know some of these people a little better from his perspective, put it that way.
Yeah, it is. It's so cool that he has that connection, and it really is like an invisible college. I love it. They're larger than life characters, and it's interesting that this, you know, it's named Adamantium, I believe. I mean, it's interesting how this, you know, it really does read like a real life comic book just because of these larger than life characters and what they're involved in. It's amazing. And it seems like really we kind of may have the ideal successor with the background and character and the passion, as your article states, that is required for this type of position. So I'm sure the story will go on. MJ, where can you tell our listeners where they can find your books, where they can find your articles, your things of that nature, and stay in touch with what you're up to?
Yeah, totally. The best place to find sort of all of my content lumped together is just my website, mjbanias.com. Or if you can just Google MJ Banias, you'll find it. All of my articles get archived there. Links to my book, my now defunct YouTube channel, which, you know, lasted a solid year, and has now since kind of been put on the backlog because of all the writing. So yeah, it's all kind of there. My blog, Terra Obscura, you can still access through that website as well. I'm on social media as well. Twitter is my main hangout, and I'm just at MJ Banias. Yeah, and obviously drop me a line. I love hearing from individuals, sort of, and my real interest is people's stories. So if you have a cool UFO story or a cool paranormal story to tell, you know, shoot me an email. I'll definitely, you know, check it out, read it. You know, if I find it really interesting, I'll definitely shoot you an email back, and I'll definitely want to hear more, because I love sort of hearing people's stories and seeing how they all connect. So. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything.
Oh, that's great. And I can't wait to have you back. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep writing about the things that are so surreal. I mean, real life is stranger than fiction, and you're getting to those awesome topics. It's just great. Thanks again, MJ, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Oh, thanks very much. It's been an honor. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. My favorite as far as articles go, it's always MJ Banias bringing us the best projects of the most important topics, and always in a timely manner. Can't thank him enough for coming on the podcast. He's really, really a cool guy. And until next time, if you have nothing to do while you stay home with this coronavirus lockdown, check out heroparanormal.com and become a patron for $1 or more. You can access all of our patron content and more. So anyway, stay entertained, folks out there, and stay safe. Keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine.